So I'm passing around what I actually use on a day-to-day. I use that chart there, and this is my 21st year using that chart. So what you'll see on there is you'll see these darkened these darkened blocks. That's the actual of what actually happened. And then normally what I'll do after we're done is I'll just put a 3 behind it, like, because we grazed these paddocks 3 days, and I'll just put the number of days of grazing. The only reason I do that is at the end of the season when I do my evaluation, I don't have to go and count how many. I just look at the numbers and then I can add it up for each paddock. Now, there's a number of people who use the grazing chart as a record. The most vital part of the grazing chart, hey, this is very important, Steve. The most important, most important part, it's the most valuable part of the grazing chart is this right here. This is the plan. You don't need a grazing chart to record. I know one guy, he has been recording in his little book, and all he has to do at the end of the season to do his evaluation, he goes through his book and he knows how many animals, what day they moved in, what day they moved out. So you don't need the grazing chart for that. This is what you need the grazing chart for, right here, is the plan. So that tells you in middle of June, at this latitude, how many days of recovery do you need, plus or minus?
3.
Mike,
35.
what? 3, grace period. Did I say grace period?
Yeah.
Mike, I apologize, I swore. You answered the right question, I apologize. I take that back.
I think you're both back.
You can edit that out. Sorry, Mike.
No, I'm leaving it all in.
I thought you were being an
All
ass.
of it.
Okay, sorry.
You said recovery period.
Recovery period.
I think you were right. He's screwing with you.
Yeah.
We'll need that recording to prove it in court.
Okay, can we get back to the topic? Okay,
3 worked last time.
June 15th. What is the recovery period? Plus or minus?
35 days coming in.
Excellent. Jeez, I should have had door prizes. Sorry, next time. Okay, so when I go and do my grazing plan on my grazing chart, this is the way I do. I put these little lines and then one through, and that tells me how many days that I'm thinking it's going to happen. And I do this in pencil because I end up doing a lot of erasing. But what that allows me to do is I can just come here, and so I go through my planned rotation, and then I come back and I start up here. And then all I have to do is go count the number of days of recovery. And that will tell me if I'm on target. If I'm not, I know 3 weeks in advance. Like if something changes, a minimum of 3 weeks in advance, I know I have to change something. Either I have to, like if I come here and I'm at 45 days, boy, I better get going. So I better just, don't look at the grass, just keep going. If I'm only at like 28 days, ooh, I either better slow down or I better find some more grass to give me another, if 28 days, to give me another a week or so of recovery. That's what the plan does. So this is the most beneficial part right here, is these blocks that aren't shaded in. The shaded just gives me, that's my record. But I could be doing that in my notebook.
So what happened to 9 on the second rotation?
So what happened was I changed the rotation a little bit because just the way the gates were.
Yeah.
And so then the cattle had to come down the alley. So yeah, because over there, the gate, there's only a gate here and there's a gate in the middle that goes to the other paddock. And so I went to the other paddock, and then I let them come down the alley. I just forgot about it. And to tell you the truth, it wasn't until I was updating my grazing plan, like updating this part for how long we were going to be grazing, it wasn't adding up. Like I was at the wrong date. Like Terry, you know how I was saying, oh, I'm at the wrong date? That's what happened, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. And then I realized, oh, I forgot that paddock.
So you weren't going to the grazing chart. You were watching.
I thought that was the most important.
I wasn't watching the grass. I just knew in my head. Okay, edit that part out too, please. Okay, so where are we? Oh yeah. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so again we started. Well, I got the first load of heifers the night of the 13th, but Becky, I think you brought me 20?
Yeah.
That first night. Yeah, and then the next day, then we started getting more heifers. So I just started, I didn't count, and it was also late that night. So I didn't start on the 13th, even though I got some cattle on the 13th, I started on the 14th. So we did that. We went out, we were there for 3 days, and we started going. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna count here. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. That's the recovery. We're pushing, like I was pushing the end envelope, or, you know, because I said 35 days plus or minus 5 days. But you know what, I thought that's all right. So I just kind of left it that way. But had I been at 42 days, some of these paddocks would have been 2 days. Like I did do a couple at 2 days, but there would have been more paddocks so that I could get down closer to 35 days. Is everybody really thinking, or are they just?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, at the start
What's your name again?
Jacob.
Jacob, okay.
At the start of your talk, you said that maybe you wanted like 120 heifers, and then you ended up with 80 heifers based on contribution availability.
Yeah.
What do you use to estimate like your stocking density if you're to start rotationally grazing a new pasture?
Go less. Wouldn't you agree, Steve? Yeah, go less. Like now I can kind of go and I can kind of make an estimation, but that's come from grazing a lot of different groups.
Okay.
And here I didn't know until, oh, sorry, repeat the question. How do you estimate how many animals you should have start grazing with? Because here we started with 80, and I said earlier in the talk that we could have easily grazed 120 in the rotational paddock.
How many acres?
I haven't figured that out yet. Steve, do you know, or Amber?
It's 160 acres here.
Minus the 10 acres.
Minus the 10 acres for the continuous.
And then
Minus the corrals, minus
the dugout. So I haven't, at the end of the year, what I'm going to do for GRO is I'm going to do an evaluation each paddock, and I will do how many. I'll actually do it into stock days per acre, and a stock day per acre is the same as Ken, is what you would have. It's like bushels per acre, just in grass. What's that?
Animal units per acre.
I don't use animal units per acre because it varies. So I go with stock day, which and it's like an animal unit would get converted to a stock day. So okay, so your question was how do you judge how many animals? How many animals did you judge? Someone just touched the electric fence. Hey, hands off the fence! We just built that. Okay, how do you judge how many animals you should be grazing on a property? And you know what, it depends on the year, but it depends on what, you have to make your best judgment. But I would recommend going conservative.
Not liberal.
Can I ask
I knew he was going to get political.
So
Is this a supplemental question?
no?
Just a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you were to take a piece that was a continually grazed piece and convert it into a rotationally grazed piece with your 13 paddocks,
Yeah.
you could probably like estimating economically the advantages to it. Is there a rough ratio as to how many more animals you think you could get on it, or how many more days of grazing you could get on it by converting that pasture? Like if you're trying to promote somebody to do it, is there, like, can you say roughly how much more you're going to get?
Okay, I'm going to
Repeat
give
the question.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to repeat the question.
If the question was, if you were to go from continuous grazed pasture to a rotational grazed pasture, how many how much more grazing would you get by doing the rotational? Is that
Yep.
close enough?
Yep.
Okay. Again, this is out of the realm of what this tour was supposed to be about today, but so I'm going to talk about my experience as a custom grazier, and I think Steve would have the same experience. By the time that I was able to rent land, the pasture was about to be, it needed to be plowed up, or it was worn out hayland. That's the land that I got. And it has been my experience that with that kind of land, one cow-calf pair requires about 1.5 acres for 160 days of grazing. So that's not a hard rule, but that's been my experience. And can you add anything there, Steve?
Yeah, okay. I would say that when you're switching from continuous grazing to rotational grazing, you will get an improvement, but it might not necessarily need to be in animal numbers. Maybe it's in animal days.
Well, yeah, that
Right, maybe
pays,
you-
so
Bring in the same number of animals. Let's say a quarter normally does,
Good point.
50
Yeah.
cow-calf pairs. Okay, I would still bring in 50 cow-calf pairs, but I would rotate it because chances are, like Tom just said, it needs to heal. You need to fix it because it's been overgrazed for many, many years. Bring in the same number of animals. That way you're understocking. But, if you're having a good year, well, then you get to graze later. Maybe you'll be grazing in November, right? So I wouldn't get too aggressive right away on upping my numbers because I'm going to get more animal days, but maybe in length, not necessarily in, number of animals.
So, like, in your experience, have you noticed a drastic increase in days, or like, just curious?
It
like,
depends
how-
on the land.
Yeah.
I would say that average is about a 50% increase, right? But there's some pieces of land that it just didn't want to heal. Like you needed something else. You needed to get out there and do
Just
something.
so
And-
deteriorated.
Yeah. And then other pieces, within a year, man, it just takes off and goes. I mean, it all also depends on the year you take it over.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you took over overgrazed, abused land this year, yeah, good luck healing it, right? It's just not going to happen when you don't get the rain. But yeah, there's that 50% that I've used. But normally that's in time more than number of animals right away. Yeah, right away.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. That's good.
Rick, wouldn't you say though, the other thing to look at is the rate of gain of these animals because they're always eating grass at the right time.
Sweet
That's
spot.
where you're gonna benefit the most.
Okay. Your name's Evelyn, right? No.
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Okay. Anonymous just made the comment that the other benefit is the gain on the cattle because they're always eating fresh forage, and in this case they'd be eating forage in the sweet spot. So thank you. That was a great comment.
I think that's the best benefit.
And Anonymous said again, that's probably the best benefit. Okay. Okay, the last thing that I want to say about, or just to let you know, so as you can see, we started grazing on May 14th here. Okay. And really, I think I had mentioned earlier, I wanted to start 1 week earlier, but I was worried about a cold snap that we're having. And oh yeah, I should talk about getting out early. When you have, like Terry, in your case, when your pasture is right by your house. Okay, so getting out early for you is a little bit different than getting out early here, because all you have to do, if you make a mistake and you got too early, you were feeding before, why not just go back feeding? Whereas here, we have to be more cautious because we can't, it'd be more difficult to do that. And in 21 years, I've made that mistake 3 times. I've got out like too early. I was expecting it to warm up and it didn't. So, we start grazing and I realized, oh, went too early. Just back to feeding. Not a big deal. And like for you, in your case, it'd be no big deal for you. And then you just, like the 3 times that I made a mistake, or that I got out too early, I only had to feed for about a week. And then we just got going again. So, okay. I think that's about all that I want to say about the grazing chart. But again, to me, this is critical for being a successful grazier. But unfortunately, very few people believe me. And so I'm having a heck of a time getting people to start using this the proper way, using it for the planning.
Just need to work on your trustworthiness.
Screw off.
I got a quick question. There's like a green shadow on there. What's that for?
That's when you think that you're using an erasable marker and you're using a permanent marker. Thanks, Mike. You're
welcome.
awesome.
Shouldn't paddock 16 be on there completely blacked out?
It's inaccurate.
You know what? I'm a rotational grazer, not a continuous grazer, so that's why it's not on there. It's my chart, man. Okay.
You invited the wrong people.
I know. So, anyways, I hope, because I want to go out and walk now, so that you can kind of get a feel for what has been going on. So before we go, are there any other questions about what we talked about over there or the grazing chart? I know, you know what, I'm not always concise in my explanation, so I'm a little worried that I don't always explain the concepts very well. But if there's anything you don't get, just ask me. Yeah, Terry.
So now, for your rotational grazing, do you do anything for like reseeding for different species in your grass? Your pastures you've taken over, or how do you try and improve your pasture to get a better grass growing?
Okay. So Terry just asked the question if I do anything for reseeding in pastures just to get better grass growing. I have, and my big thing, I love red clover. In fact, a lot of people don't know this about me, but my Cree name is Tommy Red Clover.
Are we gonna treat you 6 months?
This is the part you're supposed to laugh. That was a joke. I worked on that for a week. Thanks, Steve. Okay, but I'm going to back up a little bit, and this is what I believe, and has been my experience. It takes me 3 years to get things going. So, as I said, when I was custom grazing, I rented a lot of pasture, and I've been ranch managing for, I think, 7 years now on other people's property. It takes me 2 years to get the infrastructure sorted out, get the water sorted out, and get the fencing sorted out. And then year 3, then you can see what you really have. And so what I've been finding is that like a lot of people are grazing in the stage 3 in reproductive. So I like going there because you can have amazing results, because there the biology is just asleep. You just have to wake it up. When people are, regularly grazing in that stage 3, they're not overgrazing. They're undergrazing. So they're always grazing stage 3 grass. The bugs have gone to sleep. So all you have to do is wake them up. So usually that just takes some getting the infrastructure tightened up, and nobody that I know is using the grazing chart like this for the plant. So it's just doing that. And so then year 1 and 2, again, I'm getting I'm tightening up the grazing, and that's the grazing chart and the infrastructure. Year 3, you have this explosion of grass. The bugs have woke up. You have the infrastructure, so you're able to move when you need to move, and it becomes simple. Then that is the time that you can make that. In my opinion, that's the time that you can make the decision: should I add some more seed? And it's my belief, particularly around here, if you get a handle on the grazing, there's amazing species that you will see, and that comes from the seed bank. There's just tons of seed, and that we don't see because it's been it's been dormant. I have a friend. He's an older guy. I think it was 5 years ago. This plant started growing, and he didn't know what the hell that was. It was Sicer milk veg. He seeded that in 1974, and nothing grew. Like, that seed did not grow until he got his grazing under control. So does that kind of answer your question, Terry? Kinda. I know farmers don't like to hear that because that's their mentality. But my mentality: get the grazing under control first, and then let's look at this other stuff. Because often you won't have to do anything. All you need to do is get the grazing under control and tighten things up. Okay, any other questions before we? Yep.
I guess like with some of these ranches that you manage, or like the changes in infrastructure you made, we have some, like, we graze quite a bit of bushland. So, we're kind of like, some of these we're trying to make into smaller paddocks, but some of them we're looking at like maybe doing like some selective logging, or like opening up certain, like chunks to try and get better utilization of them, like going into the bush and grazing the grass underneath. Have you found anything that's been like?
Okay, so Becky just asked the question: have I found anything that works for improving bush pasture? And yes, I use, just to preface this, I use bush pasture as my drought insurance. Saying that, I do not like grazing bush and open together. I graze both, but not together. And the reason that I do that is because of the nutrient transfer. There was a trial. It was a fertilizer trial done up in actually up in your country, Akeem, up in the Peace Country. And so what happened was they fertilized the pasture, and then 5 years later, the technician went to the manager and said, "We need to do this again." He said, "What? We just did it 5 years ago." Soil tests said they need fertilizer.